Namaste, welcome to this session. We are considering the Kriya Yoga and Kriya Yogi, and therein, traditionally and classically, it is believed that Kriya Yogi is accomplished Jnana Yogi, Karma Yogi, Dhyana Yogi, Bhakti Yogi. The Jnana Yoga of Kriya Yogi helps him counter the Avidya klesha. The Karma Yoga in Kriya Yogi helps him get rid of Asmita. And Dhyana Yoga in Kriya Yogi helps him overcome Raga-Dves duality. And Bhakti Yoga in Kriya Yogi helps him overcome Abhinives. So the Kriya Yoga attenuates kleshas. Kleshas are Avidya, Asmita, Raga, Dvesha, Abhinives. So, if I may say so, the concept like antibiotics, there are anti-kles otics. The anti-kles otics are to be traced in Jnana Yoga for Avidya. And the Karmayoga to attenuate Asmita, Dhyana Yoga to attenuate Raga-Dvesha, and Bhakti Yoga to attenuate Abhinives. So Kriya Yoga attenuates kleshas, and the kleshas are attenuated by 4 kinds of yogs. And all these 4 kinds of yogs have foundational consideration in Ashtanga Yoga. Now, we saw that Karma Yoga and the Karma Yogi and Karma Yoga in Kriya Yogi helps him overcome Asmita Klesha. Now we are going to consider the Dhyana Yoga and Kriya Yogi as Dhyana Yogi. So Dhyana Yoga, Dhyana Yogic culture, Dhyana Yogic ethos, Dhyana Yogic practices help him counter, mitigate, attenuate, overcome the Raga-Dvesha duality of kleshas. Now, this Dhyana Yoga means in Ashtanga Yoga, what is adhered to and what is embraced and what is practiced and anushtanam carried out is about Ashtangas. So the Ashtanga Yoga introduces us to technology of yoga, technology of purifying the consciousness, constituting the consciousness, rearranging the consciousness, elevating the consciousness, evolving the consciousness, reforming the consciousness. And the technology consists of asana, kriya, mudra, pranayama, bandhas, japa, dhyana. So these are the aspects of technology with respect to one's own embodiment. So in short, asana, pranayama and japa-dhyana. And there is a prolific, enormous technology behind all these practices. And these practices help the Ashtanga sadhaka to evolve the physiological processes of the embodiment, help also address the physiology of consciousness, physiology of psychology. So there is consideration of Sthula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram, Karana Shariram, beyond the exoteric anatomy which the modern science knows. There is much more about the human embodiment known to Yoga Shastra, because it refers to Sukshma Shariram and Karana Shariram. It also refers to Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha. Then in its esoteric anatomical aspects, it also considers the Shat Chakras, Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipuraka, Anahata, Vishuddhi, Agnya. So these chakras are understood to be working on our tendency body. And our tendency is behind our activities, tendency is behind our conduct, the tendencies are behind our plane of consciousness, grade of consciousness, level of consciousness, function of consciousness, manifestation of consciousness. Now, these Shat Chakras are not identified by the exoteric anatomy, physiology. If you open out a modern book of human anatomy, you will not find anywhere chakras. But the chakras are very much there, and they are part of esoteric anatomy. So there are kriyas with respect to Shat Chakras, which are working behind our mindset, mind constitution, mind manifestation, and mind functions. Then there are Granthi-traya, concept of Granthi-traya, that is Vishnu Granthi, Rudra Granthi, Brahma Granthi. So yoga technology also works on these aspects. Yogasanas, pranayama, all these things work enormously on these esoteric aspects of anatomy. And therefore the mind making becomes a probability in yoga. And that too organically, physiologically. It's not just cerebral process and the thought process which is stormed by a cerebral process by somebody giving a brainwash. So in Adhyatma, mere brainwash is not sufficient. And of course that takes place by satsanga, sadhu sanga, santa sanga, satsanga, sadhana sanga, shastra sanga. So brainwash aspect does play a role, and it is taken care of by the ethos of yoga, because as we have seen that there is consideration of satsanga, sadhana sanga, shastra sanga. Then satvik ahar, vihar, achar, vichar, the principle of yajna, dana, tapas. So these are all the aspects where there is brainstorming, mind storming, psychomental mind storming, cerebral mind storming, cerebral brainstorming, and of course that they would contribute for man making. So listening to gospels of sages and saints, listening the words of wisdom in satsanga, or getting the words of wisdom by shastra sanga, that is also tackled by satsanga and shastra sanga. But there is something called as sadhana sanga. In sadhana sanga, there is recourse taken to certain practices, and these are yama anushtanas, niyama anushtanas, asana anushtana, pranayama anushtana, pratyahar anushtana. These are bahirangas. And then japa-dhya anushtans. So they work organically. So in sadhana sanga, there is consideration of sthula sharira sadhana, sukshma sharira sadhana, karana sharira sadhana, and we have considered these in our earlier part of delineations. And these things work on the embodiment and our mind quite organically. They work on our chitta very organically, very spontaneously and biochemically. So we should understand that the concepts such as sadhana sanga, satvik ahar vihar achar vichar, they would work something organically. We would be handling our pranic physiology, we will be handling our subtle physiology, subtle in the sense sukshma sharir physiology, with sthula sharira, sukshma sharira, karana sharir sadhana, then annamaya sharira sadhana, pranamaya sharira sadhana, manomaya sharira sadhana. So these three koshas, the sadhanas are also with reference to these three koshas. And therefore that the karna shariram, which is of jivatma, constituted by jivatma, can be cultured, can be processed, can be faceted, can be cleansed, can be washed, etc. So then organically we would be secreting noble condition and sublime condition. So that's the technology which is given by Ashtanga Yoga. Esoterics of asanas, esoterics of pranayamas, where we have Panchatattva Kriya, 5 elements which work on our minds or have influence over our mind, are purified, set right, tuned. Then the Pradamaya Kosha, the Pancha Prana Kriyas are there, Shatchakra Kriyas are there. So all these things are part of yoga technology which is not available in modern theoretical Gnana Yoga, Neo Gnana Yoga, where it's only cerebral process. You are only done some kind of counseling and given some noble thoughts, and then they try to storm our psychological mind with noble thoughts, and that would contribute to some extent in our change in lifestyle, perhaps change in conduct of life as well. But yoga works something organically. It uses every organ as a secreting gland for noble mind. Anatomy doesn't know that every organ can secrete noble psyche and consciousness. They know what organs secrete for food processing, for breaking the proteins and vitamins and etc. etc. But the yoga technology works on our physiology, physiology of body, physiology of mind, physiology of consciousness as well. So Dhyana Yoga means taking recourse to all these things, which is given in the technology of yoga. You know that there are Shat Kriyas which are mentioned in Hatha Yoga, Hatha Yogic texts. So the Shat Kriyas are part of this Dhyana Yoga practices. And the Shat Kriyas, you should recall as to what these Shat Kriyas are. And for your ready reference, I will name them. They are Neti, Dhauti, Basti, and Nauli, Kapalbhati, Trataka. Of course, we will not be going into details at this point in time, but at some stage we will be considering it. So Hatha Yoga mentions these Shat Kriyas, which are purificatory Kriyas. They are to purify our embodiment, they are to purify our corporeal body, then our mental body, psychological mental body, emotional body, and so that's why they are called Shuddhi Kriyas. Shat Kriyas are Shuddhi Kriyas. So they contribute for a Dhyana Yogi here, who is a Karma Yogi. Kriya Yogi rather, a Kriya Yogi, also a Dhyana Yogi. So these practices are carried out by Dhyana Yogi for purificatory processes of the consciousness and the embodiment. So there are Shat Kriyas. So they do contribute quite organically for evolvement of human consciousness. Then the asana, pranayam, yogasana, pranayam, etc., the esoteric aspects of yogasana, pranayam, etc., where there are panchatattva kriyas, shat chakra kriyas, laya kriyas, samskritik kriyas. So all these contribute organically. They change the very body chemistry, biochemistry of a yogi, and it contributes for working against the kleshas. So Dhyana Yoga is adhering to all these technological aspects given by yoga. Kriyas, bandhas, mudras, pranayamas. So also considering Surya Nadi, Chandra Nadi, Nadi Shuddhi. You can understand the importance of Nadi Shuddhi for purity of the mind, sanctity of the mind, cosmicalization of the mind. So these technological aspects are accomplished by the Kriya Yogi, and they work in countering Raga-Dves. They work in having giving a yogi, bestowing a yogi a balanced mind, psyche, consciousness, and insulations to attachment, aversion, dualities. This is so important in Adhyatma, that if you are disinsulated to attachment, aversion, that means you are nowhere in Adhyatmic process. So the point is, Dhyana Yoga organically works, and the technology of yoga, technology of human consciousness addressals or processing the human consciousness is of enormous importance. And one should know this marvel about technology of yoga in working on the very consciousness. So Dhyana Yogi is well versed in all these aspects. Japa, Dhyana, Mantra. So Japa means there is mantra. Then there are mantras to evolve the mind, to have sublimation of the mind, and which is part of Dhyana Yoga. Asana, pranayam, japa, dhyana, apart from the kriyas. In kriyas you will be getting all those shat kriyas of Hatha Yoga too, yogasana kriyas, pranayama kriyas, Surya Chandra Nadi kriyas. You can understand how the chitta is stormed by technological processes. So in yoga technology, one should be aware of all these aspects, which are quite prominent aspects of technology of yoga. Surya Nadi, Chandra Nadi, Dasha Nadis, Granthis, Koshas, Chakras. So yoga provides technology for all that. And this Dhyana Yogi is well versed in those aspects. And therefore, quite an amount of regulated mind, regulated chitta, regulated consciousness, reformed consciousness becomes available to yogi. So, in brief, a student of Ashtanga Yoga should be aware of the Shuddhi Kriyas, Shat Kriyas, Then there are mudras. So one should be aware of all these mudras. And yoga technology gives marvelous technology of mudras, which can really work for the evolvement of consciousness. And one should look into Hatha Yoga texts such as Hatha Yoga Pratipika, Shiva Samhita, Girenda Samhita, Goraksha Shatak, Goraksha Samhita, Siddha Siddhanta Paddhati. So it will mention about all those technological aspects of yoga. So Hatha Yoga to Kundalini Yoga. The Hatha Yogic processes are also based on mantra and laya. So there is laya yoga, there is mantra yoga. So after Ashtanga Yoga, the first course is in mantra yoga, which is of 16 limbs, where so many aspects of technology are there, of human embodiment needed in mantra sadhana. So there are 16 limbs of mantra yoga. So those 16 limbs equip the Kriya Yogi. And then comes the Laya Yoga of 9 limbs, where the absorption of chitta becomes paramount. And the technology for absorption of the chitta comes handy by Laya Yoga. So Laya Yoga is there, so Mantra Yoga, Laya Yoga, and Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga tells us about the Shatkriyas, etc., the Bandhas, the Mudras, etc. So they come very handy for the reformation of consciousness. And then it goes up to Kundalini Yoga, Raja-Dhes Yoga. So all these, there is a basis for all these in very Ashtanga Yoga, classical Ashtanga Yoga. The primary understanding and primary teachings with regards to all the various kinds of yogas are available in Ashtanga Yoga, classical. So they work on evolving the consciousness. So this primarily works for balanced mind. It should be noted that, or noticed and recalled, that when we were dealing with Chitta Vritti Nirodha, we were told that it is, first of all, the mind should be balanced. The mind should be quiet and then balanced. The mind quiet and then balanced and then sublimated and then cosmicalized. And then restrained. Restraint comes as a topping of the cake. Icing on the cake. That's restraint is the icing on the cake. It's not a button that you press and the restraint happens. So before restraint, so many things had to happen. And one of those things, very importantly, is samatvam, equanimity of the mind. And equanimity of the mind means insulated to Raga-Dves. So he has enormous quiver to be developing anti-kles otics for Raga-Dves. And to sum up, it is asana, pranayama, nadi kriyas, chakra kriyas, tattva kriyas, udyanadi mudras, the Bandha-trayas which come in pranayama. So there is enormous technology which is in at the fingertips of a Kriya Yogi, whereby he can work on having that chitta in equanimity, and not just mind in equanimity, but very chitta in equanimity. So Dhyanayoga means to be well versed with all practical aspects, starting from Yajna Dana Tapas principle as to what should be done to inculcate this principle, the technology behind inculcating Yajna principle, Dana principle, Tapa principle, and then the Sanga-traya, Sat Sanga, Sattva Sanga, Sadhu Sanga, Santa Sanga, Sattva Sanga, Sadhana Sangha, Shastra Sangha. In Sadhana Sangha, just now I briefed you about all these various practices by way of asana, kriya, mudra, bandhas, pranayamas, japa, dhyana, etc. So, this is in his quiver. And therefore, the chitta becomes equal, and not just the mind becomes equal, but the chitta becomes equal. The chitta gets insulated to dualities, raga-dvesha. Not only mind getting insulated, but the chitta getting insulated. So, that is how this Dhyanayoga is. That means the entire technology of Yoga Shastra, technology given in Yoga Shastra for Chitta Vyavasthapanam, Chitta Shuddhi, Chitta Samskaranam, Chitta Samskruti, and Chitta Vritti Nirodham. So that is the whole technology in Dhyana Yoga. So these aspects are developed in very Ashtanga scheme of classical yoga, and then they are also evolved later when somebody is graduating in Ashtanga yoga, going to a level of excellence in Ashtanga yoga. Then all these aspects of Hatha yoga, Laya yoga, Mantra yoga, Raja yoga, Kundalini yoga, all these technological aspects would be in the quiver, and then they are applied by Dhyana Yogi for countering Raga-Dves. So this is how Dhyana Yoga is characterized. I just try to give you a skeletal information about the Dhyana Yoga technology, Dhyana Yoga practices. Now let's finally consider a Dhyana Yogi. Let's try to characterize Dhyana Yogi. How is this Dhyana Yogi? So even if we do not understand Dhyana Yoga clearly now, characterizing Dhyana Yogi will tell you about what is Dhyana Yoga, how is Dhyana Yoga, what Dhyana Yoga must be doing, what is the contribution of Dhyana Yoga. Once we have little clear idea of Dhyana Yogi. So the Dhyana Yogi is beautifully described in verses of Bhagavad Gita in the 18th chapter. So we will take a view of it. So Dhyana Yogi characterization will give us some information, some idea about, or vague idea of what is Dhyana Yoga. So we are going to turn to it. And I have been very, very brief to just explain out these yogs. Which a Kriya Yogi is an embodiment, personification of the four yogs. Jnana-yoga, Karmayoga, Dhyanayoga, Bhakti-yoga, which we are going to see subsequently. But let's try to move to Bhagavad Gita, which characterizes Dhyana Yogi in wonderful, enchanting verses which appear in 18th chapter. So we'll look into it now. So the Gita in the 18th chapter, starting from verse 51. I will read out the first very, very lyricized passage and beautiful poetry in the passage. Buddhya vishuddhya yukto dhrutyatmanam niyamya cha shabdadin vishayan tyaktva raga-dveshau vyadasya cha vivakta sevi laghvashi yat vakkaya manasa dhyana yogopparo nityam vairagyam samupashritaha ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham parigraham vimucya nirmamah shanta brahma bhuyaya kalpate brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochate na kankshati samah sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhakti labhate param. So verse 51, 52, 53, 54. These are 4 verses from 18th chapter. And they characterize the Dhyana Yogi. What does this passage convey to us? Endowed with an untarnished intellect and partaking of light, subjective light luminosity, sattvika and regulated diet, having been living in a very lonely place, isolated place, pure place, unidentifiable place, having rejected Shabda Sparshadi Vishayas, having rejected the sensory objects, having controlled the mind, speech and body by restraining the mind and senses through firmness of sattvika type, taking resolute stand on dispassion, vairagyam, after having completely got rid of aversion and attachment, remaining ever devoted to yoga of dhyanam, dhyana yoga, having given up egotism, violence, arrogance, lust, anger and luxuries, devoid of the feeling of mime, that is mindness, and totally tranquil in heart. Such a yogi becomes qualified for oneness with Brahman, which is truth, consciousness and bliss. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So this is how the Dhyana Yogi has been characterized. And with this Dhyana Yoga component, the Kriya Yogi is able to counter Raga-Dves kleshas, which play havoc in human mind, human life. And these major factors now are kept at bay by Dhyana Yoga technology. So that's how Dhyana Yogi is characterized. And to get this kind of mind, the technology is, as has been mentioned repeatedly, is the yogic technology of Satsanga, Sadhana Sangha, Shastra Sangha, Satvik Ahar, Vihar, Achar, Vichar, Asana, Pranayama, Japa, Dhyana, Kriya, Mudra, etc. So there is Annamaya Sadhana, Pranamaya Sadhana, Manomaya Sadhana, Brahma Granthi Sadhana, Vishnu Granthi Sadhana, Rudra Granthi Sadhana, Surya Nadi Kriyas, Chandra Nadi Kriyas, Shunya Nadi Kriyas. So with all this technology, the yogi's embodiment is purified, qualified, capacitated to be vanquishing these demons of the form of raga, dvesha. The Shadripus are totally neutralized. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Madamatsarya. So they are neutralized. And there is a technology for all this in yoga. And adhering to that technology and perfecting the technology is said to be Dhyana Yoga. And one who perfects this technology is called Dhyana Yogi. So Kriya Yogi is also Dhyana Yogi. So that now he is able to counter Raga-Dvesha. So far we have seen that by Jnana Yoga he is able to counter Avidya or wage a battle against Avidya. With Asmita, for the klesh of Asmita, he is able to wage a battle with Karmayoga. And now Raga-Dves, he wages the battle with Dhyanayoga. And that is why the klesha management is accomplished. Of course, now the last one remains Abhinives, which we will be considering next time with Bhaktiyoga. And for all these 4 yogs, you get the basic components of 4 yogs in Ashtanga Yoga. So when is Ashtanga Yoga genuine, authentic? If it is giving you components of Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, then only Ashtanga Yoga is classical kind of Ashtanga Yoga. If these components are not significantly collected, identified and collected and stacked up, it is not authentic, genuine Ashtanga Yoga. So this also should be understood by those who claim that they are in Ashtanga Yoga. They practice Ashtanga Yoga. So with that, we considered the third of the quadrant of yoga. And as I said, in Ashtanga Yoga, you will get components for Jnana Yoga in Swadhyaya. Moksha Shastranam Adhyanam, Veda Adhyanam, Pavitra Mantranam Japaha. So that is the Jnana Yoga sadhana. In Karma Yoga sadhana, basically the Ahankara Shuddhi takes place. The subjective entity is enormously processed and stormed and cultured by process of Ashtanga Yoga. Asana Pranayama work enormously on purifying the subjective entity. And the Karma Yoga has been mentioned in the Ishvara Pranidhanam of Patanjali scheme, which is Sarva Karmanam Paramaguruvarpanam. So Karma Yoga also is considered in Ashtanga Yoga scheme. And now Dhyana Yoga also is considered in Ashtanga scheme by Kaya Vacha Manas Tapas, by Yama Niyamas, by Asana Pranayama, etc. So Dhyana Yogic components are also collected. Now we will see how Bhakti Yoga components are collected in Ashtanga Yoga and what is Bhakti Yoga and Bhakti Yogi in Kriya Yogi. Kriya Yogi is a composite of Jnana Yogi, Karma Yogi, Dhyana Yogi, Bhakti Yogi. So four put together is what Kriya Yogi is classically according to Patanjali's concept of it. So in the next session we will consider the fourth yoga, which is known as Adhyatma. Adhyatma speaks about Jnana, Dhyana, Karma, Bhakti. So we have considered Jnana, Dhyana, Karma. We have yet to consider Bhakti, which we will do in the next time, next session, where it helps encounter or counter, mitigate and neutralize Abhinives, which is the fifth of the kleshas. So enough for the time being. Namaskar all of you.